Losing your baby after birth. You're not alone. Hello everyone, welcome. I'm Dr. Kirsten Hunter. We're here with Signpost for Living, and we're here with gorgeous Carmel Chesterfield. Hello.
Hello.
Thank you for coming.
You are very welcome.
We've been talking about this for a long time, haven't we?
We have, definitely.
And here we are.
We made it.
We made it. 2 busy lives finally coming together. So thank you so much. So our topic today doesn't match the music. The music's a bit happy, and this is a story where there's a lot of pain, obviously.
Yep.
Yeah. So losing our baby after birth. So I wanted to bring you along because I work with a lot of people who lose babes.
Yep.
Whether through the pregnancy or after birth. And when I say a lot, I mean not a lot, but way too often in my liking. And they feel alone. They don't know someone else who's had a similar experience.
Yep.
So my thoughts are, having a podcast where we talk about this, someone out there might pick it up and say, hey, I'm not alone.
Yep, that's good. I like that.
Yeah. Okay, so let's introduce. So we've got you and your hubby, you've got 3 gorgeous kids.
Yes.
But that was not always the story.
No, it wasn't always the story. I have one also in heaven.
That's right. You've got 4 children.
Yes.
Does that annoy? I mean, I said that, right? Just then, boom.
3 kids, yep.
But you don't. You don't. You've got 4 kids.
I do have 4 kids.
So isn't that interesting? I just said that because I'm used to you, cruising around with your 3 kids. And, but you're right, you've got 4 kids. So does that hurt you when you hear that? Particularly someone like me who should know better.
No, because it is you, so it's fine.
Okay, right.
It used to hurt a lot. I'm 8.5 years down the track, so it doesn't hurt so much. But I'm very specific that if people ask me how many children I have, I will always say I have 4. If they then ask for more details, I'll say, I've got 3 living and I have a daughter that passed away.
Yep, absolutely. Do people get that?
Sometimes.
Do you get what I mean by that? I mean, you lost your little one before a lot of them got to meet her. So
yeah,
I think
most people didn't meet her.
Yeah,
but
so I think people are quite egocentric and don't quite get that.
No. Strangers, it's just, I guess, meh with them.
Who cares?
Other people, I'm very open about our story and what we've been through. So those that know me or know of me know my story.
True.
Very well. Too much, some people would say.
I know. Well, let's get into it. So tell me the story. Tell me what happened.
I was 3 months pregnant.
So you already had your eldest?
Yes. So I already had Lucas. Lucas was 3.5.
Yeah.
I had met my now fiancé Daniel, and we fell pregnant. It was his first baby. We were excited, I guess. It was a bit of a shock, but it is what it is. And I remember it was October 31st, 2014. And I remember...
Very precise.
It's Halloween.
Oh, right.
And Daniel was at a course, and I went to the hospital for an ultrasound. And I was excited about getting some ultrasound photos and bringing them home to show Daniel because he couldn't come with me.
How many weeks pregnant were you at this stage?
Nearly 13 weeks.
Yeah. So you're thinking, right, we've passed 12 weeks, we're now in the safe
zone. I just wanted photos. That's all I was going in for, was to get some photos and do the nuchal translucency scan. And they scanned me for ages, for quite some time. And then at the end, the sonographer's just like, I need to get a doctor. I need to see a doctor. And she's like, your baby's heart is not quite where it should be. And I was like, oh, okay. And then so
panic rising in you?
Yeah, definitely. My worst fear, I guess, as a mum, and before I was a mum, was to ever lose a baby. So I just didn't think it could happen to me. And I remember them saying, you need to go and see the doctor. sent me back out to the waiting room. Doctor called me up and they said, look, we believe your daughter has, oh no, my baby, I didn't know. We didn't know the gender at that point. We believe your baby has a congenital diaphragmatic hernia, which is also shortened to CDH. So there was a hole in her diaphragm, and her internal organs had moved into her chest cavity and displaced her heart, causing then her lungs to not grow. And I remember sitting there just my world spinning.
And you hadn't heard this condition?
No, gosh no. No, so, had never heard of it.
No. I mean, who has? And so at that point you said, what does that mean? And they explained this to you? They explained
all that to me. And they said, look, we're going to need to refer you to a tertiary hospital that can do another scan and just confirm the diagnosis. And so they said, we'll get that organised. And then I said, look, at the end of the day, I said, what's the worst case scenario? Like, what does this...
Mm-hmm. What are we looking at?
What are we looking at? Yeah. And they said, basically, your baby could die. And...
Oh, darn.
That floored me because I was like...
And you were on your own at this?
Oh, I was on my own, yes.
Because you were there for photos?
Yeah. Yes. I was there for photos. So I was on my own. And, I then had to go and pick Daniel up from his course that he was at. And it's kind of a blur. I don't remember much of the rest of that day. It was pretty distressing. Made a few phone calls, told a few people, and started Googling.
Learning curve began.
Yes,
that I imagine was quite daunting because I don't know if all that information is helpful.
No, though that's the one thing that we say to families now: don't Google.
Because it's big and scary.
Big and scary, especially when you come across international pages and American pages, which is very different to what we do in Australia.
So could they go in and I mean, true ignorance speaking here, and sew up the diaphragm and like put all the bits where they should be and stop this jigsaw puzzle from squishing in the wrong direction? Could they do that?
Not in utero.
Right, of course.
They can do it after birth, but they can't do it while the babies are inside, although that's been my latest question for the doctors. Can we do it while they're...
Well, that's the logical question, isn't it?
Yeah.
And were they talking about whether this sort of thing could be operated on after birth?
Yes, so we had to travel and have a tertiary scan. That hospital then confirmed that we did have a diagnosis of CDH. They wanted to do extra testing, genetic testing and whatnot. I can't remember the correct words. Amniocentesis they wanted to do. And I just went, no, I'm not interested because it's not going to change what we do. So we had to travel backwards and forwards from our local hospital to a tertiary hospital, so about an hour and a half, 2 hours drive every 4 weeks.
Really?
To be scanned. Yep.
So isn't that interesting that they required advanced, medical...
Yes, imaging, and the fact that we had to deliver our baby at the tertiary hospital. We couldn't deliver at our local hospital because they're not equipped to deal with...
So we're in Toowoomba now, and this is a hospital in Brisbane. So they're needing, absolutely.
Yep. They need the specialists that Brisbane can offer.
So can you go back and state what the condition's called again?
A congenital diaphragmatic hernia. So 1 in every 2,500 babies.
Really?
It is as common as spina bifida and cystic fibrosis.
What?
Yep.
How do we not know about it?
No idea.
Gee, that's really interesting.
And 50-50 odds. And that's been the life expectancy for years now, like the outcome, the odds, 50-50, and has been for quite some time.
Break that down, 50-50 meaning what?
50% chance of survival, 50% chance of not taking your baby home.
And with survival, that's surgery immediately on birth?
No, surgery is not done immediately on birth. Not in Australia anyway.
So somehow surviving?
Yeah, so life support ventilation when they're born. And then once they stabilise, having surgery.
How young? Do you know?
Arabella had hers at 5 days old.
Right, very young.
Yeah, so yeah, extremely young.
Mm-hmm.
They can't really function, or they can't come off ventilation until they've had the surgery and they can potentially breathe on their own.
Mm-hmm. So there you were, 13 weeks moving forward, every 4 weeks coming and having a scan, each time saying the same picture, or?
It went up and down, so we had to be scanned. I had to have an MRI to see if they could gauge. They run this test called a lung to head ratio, where it's meant to help determine the outcome. Mm-hmm. So they use all these numbers, all these figures to try and give you odds and stats about how your baby's going to do. Mm-hmm. And she was always diagnosed as like low to moderate severity.
Really?
Yes.
Which would have been encouraging.
Incredibly encouraging. We were given an 80% chance of her surviving. We actually had a surgeon that we met with one day say to us, and these were his exact words, I'm not a betting man, but if I was to place bets, I'd put odds on you taking your baby home.
Wow, that's a big statement.
Huge statement, because you can't actually determine prior to birth how these babies are going to do.
No.
It is literally a guessing game.
And it's obviously he had a very good intent. He wanted to encourage you, right? He wanted to reassure you, give you some sort of comfort. But false hope is a very dangerous thing.
Extremely dangerous.
How do you now feel about those words?
Oh, those words haunt me, and they have haunted me for a long time, and they constantly...
Why do they haunt you?
Because I don't think in a medical space it's something that someone should be able to say, given that we're literally running off numbers that we don't actually know. We're guessing based on...
External scans looking in.
Yes. We don't actually know, and it's a condition that comes down to the functional capacity of the lungs. So while they might look big, if they don't work, they're not going to work. And just having surgery doesn't necessarily fix that. So there are babies with this condition that have been born and been given a 2% chance of survival, and they go home. So it's...
Really is roll the dice with all the variables changing.
Yes.
So when you say you felt haunted by him saying that, I'm guessing it caused you a lot of anguish.
Yep.
When your false hope didn't come true.
Yes.
And I'm guessing you felt quite... How did you feel towards him?
Angry, I think. For a while there, it was, how... And it was more... And bewildered, like, well, how and why would you say something like that to people expecting their baby?
Yeah, very dangerous.
Yeah, extremely dangerous.
Yeah. And it doesn't matter if someone wants to comfort you, if it's false hope. It's not comforting at all, is it? It's very damaging, very, very, very harmful.
Yeah, so it's just needs to be more a conversation of...
Facts.
Yeah, facts, yes.
Facts. You've got 80% chance, but we don't know the function of the lungs. But we don't know this, we don't know that. We will tell you what we know as we know it.
Yeah, so I think a lot of the numbers show 50-50, and I think they should continue to run with your 50-50 odds. 50% chance of surviving, 50% chance of not surviving, rather than starting to throw around all these other numbers.
Can I ask you, the Australian culture has people saying things like, you'll be right, you'll be right, you'll be right, you'll be fine, we like to kind of pat ourselves on the back and say, it's fine, minimise, it's fine, which, often it's not. And so I guess I'm wondering, when you came home, how open were you with people about what was happening, and what was their response, and how did that affect you?
We were extremely open from the get-go, from when we announced our pregnancy and knowing that our daughter was sick. We told everyone. We started up our own Facebook page to share our journey and what we went through.
Wow, really?
Yep.
Was that helpful to you?
Yes, it's all diarised I would write updates from the hospital, what was going on. But a lot of people, like throughout the pregnancy, we were met with, she'll be right, it's just a hernia.
I was hoping I was wrong.
So, yeah, because it was a hernia.
I think the title is very, confusing because it does imply you have a hernia in the diaphragm. That doesn't sound scary.
No, it doesn't. So most people went, oh, it's just a hernia, they can fix that. And it's so much more than just a hernia.
Yeah, definitely. So people were meaning to support and comfort you, but in fact were minimising.
Yes, I guess a lot of people were minimising and uncomfortable with what was going on. I guess then uncomfortable with the thought of a baby dying, uncomfortable with my openness, and people are still quite uncomfortable with my openness.
I love your openness. I love it. It's honest.
Someone has to be.
I mean, what do we get when we hide all this stuff? We end up not being able to reach out and have people understand what we're going through. We have to fake that we're fine and smile through pain when we're not. And then someone else next to us might have exactly the same experience, but they're not going to know because we're being silent. Yep. So I think it's courageous. I think you're putting yourself out there with the risk of people not responding well, and you risking that.
Yep.
That do you agree?
Yes, agreed. And because I was so open, I then had quite a few friends and friends of friends come out and say, oh, we've been through this. And a few friends mentioned they'd had stillborns and miscarriages, and I never knew. I was completely unaware because it wasn't something they ever shared until I went through it.
So you actually cracked this open and got people talking.
I did.
Which is good, but was that good?
Yes.
Okay.
It's good, and it's part of, I guess, my mission is to make sure that people don't feel the need to hide away from it and shy away from it. It is life. It happens. 1 in 4 women lose a baby. 1 in 4 women go through a miscarriage, and you don't need to hide away from it. It happens.
Absolutely. So would you correct people when they would say, you'll be right? Or would you just say, yeah, moving on?
I don't actually know how I responded.
I mean, it's mood dependent, depends on who you're talking to.
Yeah, definitely. I think I was aware of how serious it was, and I didn't like people blowing over it with the it's just a hernia, and I think I was probably brutally honest and would just say to people, well, basically it's life or death. We're either going to take our baby home or we're not. People don't like you being upfront and honest. No,
it's an inconvenient truth, isn't it?
I think it's scary for other people. And something I've learnt through my journey is that, and what probably I guess other people can take from it, it's for as uncomfortable as someone else is, I'm 10 times more uncomfortable. Because I'm living it. This is my journey. This is my grief.
Not too worried about you.
Yeah.
That's valid.
Yeah, definitely.
Absolutely valid. So what was it like for you going month by month? I mean, in a typical pregnancy, and you've had 2 since that have come through with beautiful babes who are healthy and gorgeous, you have a trepidation and fear, but you also have a sense, on the whole, we're going to be okay. So what was it like going through month by month and knowing the 50-50, having the false hope from this doctor? So what was that like for you?
It was up and down. I am someone who likes to be in control and be in charge and organise, and I felt very out of control. I felt like everything got taken away from me. I couldn't plan things the way I wanted. I kept working, but we then had to relocate to have the baby, so I had to finish up my job. I wasn't allowed to work for as long as I wanted to. We didn't know how long we would be in Brisbane for, so we had to break our lease where we were living, put everything into storage.
Wow, that's huge. You had to move.
Had to move, yes. Had to pack up our house. We had to make decisions as to, do we buy things for the baby? Do we not buy things for the baby?
Gee, that's huge. What did you decide?
Well, I was probably the realistic one and was like, maybe we shouldn't. Daniel, it was his first baby, so he wanted to buy things, and so we bought things. We brought I still had stuff from Lucas, but we bought the big ticket items. We bought the prams, the car seats, the baby clothes.
Was that quite meaningful because it meant we're going to back this?
Yeah, I think it was just trying to be in control of the things that we could be in control of. We could make those decisions, and it was just, trying to take back some control that had been taken away from us. So it was kind of overwhelming, and then having to be like the travelling backwards and forwards, but we tried to keep things normal, and I think we kind of went with the scenario of, if something was to go wrong, I'd want to have some sort of memories or things to look back on. So we had maternity photos done, so that, that was something. We tried to keep it as normal as possible, even though we knew the reality wasn't.
And were you both on the same page, or was one of you more hopeful than the other? Did that fluctuate between you?
If I was up, Daniel was down. If I was down, Daniel was up. So, we kind of would pull each other up when we needed to. Daniel was, I believe, the far more positive one.
More optimistic.
More optimistic, more hopeful. I was very realistic, until we went into hospital to have the baby, and because I was induced.
At how many weeks?
39 and 1.
Can I just go back a little bit? Your gorgeous boy, how was he processing, and how did you deal with, we're pregnant, but how the hell did you deal with that? Seriously, I can't even imagine.
I think we just tried to keep it simple in terms of being that he was 3.5, of what he could understand. So just that we're having a baby, but the baby is sick, and the baby needs to go to hospital. And I think we just ran with that.
So we're having a baby, but gave him some space for some complications if and when.
If and when it happened,
Gee, that would have been tough, hey?
It was tough.
Yep. Okay, so you were induced at
39 and 1. And it was that night when we went into the hospital, and we were just talking around names and whatnot, and Daniel for the first time went, "What happens if we don't bring her home?"
We're going to start this conversation.
We're going to have this conversation now.
Really? So he hadn't gone there?
He had not gone there. He had not gone
that's
there.
Scary. It's understandable.
Yep.
Yeah. And why were you induced at that point?
They try to induce or plan the birth as much as they possibly can, so that you're in a particular birth suite, so that your resus room is right there and the medical team is all on standby. So the doctors they need, the special nurses, everyone's there ready to do what they need to do.
And they wanted you to have a natural birth, not in a caesarean?
Yep, natural birth, because natural birth, when the baby's born, naturally it helps expel a lot of the fluid inside their lungs as they come down through the birth canal. So it's an easier way to get a lot of that fluid out rather than having a caesarean.
That's incredible. I mean, I'm aware of that, but it's incredible that the positives of the natural process is so valued over the control of having caesarean and whipping it out and having the medical team. That's quite beautiful, actually.
It was, and because I think that was actually one of the questions I said, is like, can I still have a natural birth I had with my son, and C-sections terrify me.
Do they?
Yes.
That terrifies you. Okay.
Yes. And so they're like, no, you can, all goes well, you can have a natural birth. And I did.
Right. So how were you feeling during that birth period?
In pain, I guess.
Right, okay, so the labour scenario, well and truly, but the concept, I'm going to have this baby soon, we're going to have answers soon. I imagine the layers were huge.
I don't think I dealt with the layers straight away. It was just...
I'm in labour and I've got enough to focus on.
Have a baby, just dot points, just get this baby born. Daniel was able to cut the cord. Mm-hmm. And they held her up for me and they whisked her away, and the plan was, no matter what happens, Daniel's to stay with her at all times. Like, don't worry about me, just make sure that she's got someone there. So he was able to go into the resus room while they ventilated her.
So at birth, how did she look and how was she?
I saw her for maybe 2 seconds.
Yep.
If that.
Yep.
So she was whisked away very quickly. I think Daniel said she let out a little squeak or a cry. And then, they basically breathing tube straight down and start ventilating.
So they knew she would come out not breathing, is that correct?
Yeah, they usually don't breathe, or they struggle to breathe.
Wow.
Because their lungs don't work properly. So then they hook them up to the ventilator and put them in the little transportable bed that they take them up to the NICU in.
The incubator.
Yes, yep.
That magic machine.
And took her up to the NICU, and then they had to put in lines and catheters and start her on medications. And
how did you cope having your baby whisked away? You've just gone through labour for who knows how many hours. How were you? I mean, I know you knew that she'd be whisked away. Because I imagine that felt terrible.
Yeah, it was hard not knowing what was happening. I think it was just hard. I don't know if I really...
I mean, the good thing is you had a natural birth, so therefore you would have recovered quicker to, I guess...
Yes, except they were busy. So I was stuck in the birth suite for hours.
What do you mean?
I had a 2nd-degree tear, so I needed stitches.
So you needed to be attended to?
I needed to be attended to, and no one was available to attend to me.
Oh no, they were all busy with
They were all busy. So I was literally in the birth suite for many hours. She was born at 3:23 in the afternoon, and then by the time they finished what they needed to do with me and then managed to find me a bed on a ward and get me up there, it was 11 o'clock at night.
Oh, wow.
So I hadn't seen her in this time at all.
That's a very long amount of time.
An extremely long amount of time. And then to put me on a ward
with babies.
Yeah, with mums and babies. And I can hear these babies crying. And
see, that's such a complication, isn't it? When
is.
Anyone has any issue,
whatever
that is to do with the babe that's complex, and then you're surrounded by babies.
Yeah, that were crying. And and I only had a couple of photos to look at because I hadn't made her down to see her yet.
Did you know that women who are having a miscarriage, they get put on the maternity ward?
Yes. Yep.
That's not good.
No. It's...
Wow. So, okay, so what happened then?
I think...
So 11 o'clock you got to see
her? To go... Well, Daniel stole a wheelchair and took me down to see her.
Good on him.
He
abducted you.
He did. Lucas had already been to see her.
Mm-hmm.
So Daniel took him into the NICU to see her. We just wanted to normalise it as best as we could for Lucas. He was very excited to have a sibling. So Daniel took him down to meet her, and he brought him back up to then see me. And I remember Lucas being like, I have a little baby sister, and this biggest grin on his face. And then, my mum was around, so she helped out. She took Lucas, and Daniel took me down to see her, and very overwhelming, lots of cords, machines, beeping machines, wires, tubes.
It's this incredible medical picture.
Yep.
Don't worry about that.
So it was really, full on, just lots. But she was beautiful and big.
Was she? So visually,
Yes.
she looked
she looked fine, and that tends to be a common theme. They can be the sickest babies in the NICU, but like internally, but externally, they look the healthiest. They're the biggest and the healthiest looking babies, but they're just very jumbled up and messed up on the inside.
'cause it's all internal.
Yeah.
Right. There you go. So, okay, so how what was the next lot of information? How long till you knew that she'd be able to have surgery at 4 days?
They usually talk about the first 24 hours of being the honeymoon period. So they'll come out and they'll be semi-stable, and then things can get a bit hairy. We didn't even get to 24 hours. We had a phone call in the middle of the night saying that she had gotten quite sick. So she was on ventilation. She was on about 50% room oxygen, which is pretty good. But then she developed what they call pulmonary hypertension, so high blood pressure in the lungs, and that's common. That tends to be very standard with them. So then they had to start her on some more medication to help fight off the blood pressure in her lungs.
And were you getting information that this was likely to be okay, or this was really uncertain?
It was... We knew that the chance like that this could happen. I guess we didn't expect it so fast. And then it was a matter of wondering what was going to happen, what was going to go on. They said the doctors would round the following morning. They would contact us and let us know what was going on, if we wanted to make it down for rounds to see the doctors. But I'm not 100% sure if we did make it down for rounds on that first day. But yeah, it was just a matter of this is what's happening and we'll go from there.
So, okay. I thought that was quite cute. All right. So, what happened between then and when it came to the day 4 surgery?
So, once they put her on this medication, nitric medication for the pulmonary hypertension, she stabilised again. And so they discussed maybe doing surgery, I think on day 3 or 4. And then we got to day 4 and they went, no, she's doing really great. We'll just leave her stable for a little bit longer. And so it was day 5 that they decided they would
it's day 5.
operate and take her down for surgery. And it was they just said, we'll give you a call when it's going to happen and you have to come and sign some forms. And it happened quite fast. They rang us and said, we're good to go, we're going to take her for surgery.
So would you say they seemed to be quite routine, quite matter-of-fact about it, or were they giving you the message this could go or not go well?
No, I think there's, learning after the fact, there's windows of time, there's time frames to do these things. They need the babies stabilised. They don't like going and operating when they're really, really sick. They like them to be, I guess, more comfortable. And
which was more day 5.
Yeah, which was day 4, but because she was stable, they went, we'll just leave her an extra day and we'll do it then. The surgery can take 3 or 4 hours. We were able to go right to theatre doors with her. So we were gowned up and we got to walk her across to the Children's Hospital through a tunnel connecting from the Women's and Babies Hospital across to the Children's Hospital. We then met the surgeon because she hadn't met us yet, introduced herself, and then they wheeled her into surgery. And I think at that point I was like, is she going to come out of this alive?
Had you had a lot of contact with her during those first 4 or 5 days? Like, were you able to get her out of the incubator and hold her?
No.
Really?
So they're incredibly sensitive to touch.
Why?
I don't actually know why.
But they wouldn't let you hold her?
No, definitely. So not stable enough to hold. Holding them can just upset them. So they need them at a certain point. They need their blood pressure doing a certain thing. They need their heart rate doing a certain thing. So they need, I guess, to dot all their I's and cross all their T's.
Were they tube feeding?
She was on TPN, so just it's a form of, I guess, sugar water. So she couldn't have my milk or anything initially. So they just give them this TPN through a nasogastric tube. Yeah.
So that must be significant that you couldn't hold her. You
couldn't touch her. Couldn't hold her. We could touch to a degree. We could hold her hands. At times we could touch her head, but then sometimes it would stimulate her, and you'd tell because her heart rate would go up, and you'd see like her blood pressure would skyrocket or it would drop.
If you stimulated her.
Yep.
So you'd be very mindful not to.
You had to be very mindful, and we had to listen to the nurses tell us.
You can touch her here.
You can touch her here now, or you can't touch her here.
Wow.
And we were able to do what they call her cares on one of the days. We were able to change her nappy. So they I think they lifted her briefly while we changed her nappy, and they changed the bedding, and we could use like a little cotton bud to clean around her mouth and nose because it was all dry from tubes and tape. But that was the extent of the care that we could do for her.
It's so unnatural. Extremely
unnatural.
What was that like for you?
Hard, challenging, but I think it was just, I have to do this. This is what I need to do.
These are the steps.
Yep, this is how we do it.
Yep. Okay, so let's move forward to, there you are, she goes into surgery, and that's when you start to think, are we going to get her?
Yeah, I was extremely worried. I was like, what happens if something goes wrong in surgery? What happens if she doesn't come out alive? The surgeon said she would call us when she was done and they were out. And so we were staying at accommodation just behind the hospital. So we walked back over there and just hung out, and many hours passed, many more hours passed.
More than expected?
Way more than expected.
Did they communicate?
No communication, nothing. And I think it ended up being 6 or 7 hours. It was something ridiculous. And I then got a phone call and I went, oh, that must be her out now. And it was the surgeon, and she said, oh, I just wanted to see that you've been up and seen Arabella.
No.
And I went, no. And she's like, I had a code blue. She said, as soon as I was done with the surgery, she said, I had to run. She said, so I couldn't call you until now. I've just got out of another surgery. But she's like, the surgery went well, and she's back on the ward. But no one...
Oh, gosh, that's
no
terrible.
one had communicated it with us. So Arabella's hole in her diaphragm was quite large. They ended up having to need a patch to repair the hole, and they said the back of her diaphragm was shredded. So they had to then stitch that to her rib cage. Her intestines were in her chest. Her stomach was in her chest. And I think her liver lobe had just started poking into the chest cavity, but that happened right at the very end of the pregnancy because it wasn't like that through the pregnancy.
The lungs, the chest cavity, incredibly delicate organ, you know, all the bronchi, etc. So what did they do with that?
So they can't really do anything with it. They push everything back down into the stomach or into the lower cavity where it's supposed to be, and stitch or put a patch on that diaphragm and let nature take its course. So she had a reasonably fully developed right lung, and she had a moderate left lung, so the size of her lungs weren't as compromised as some babies are. The left lung was definitely compromised, but not.
Yeah, and people exist with one lung, don't they?
Yes, they do.
So, wow, I can't imagine the relief you felt.
Yeah, yep. And we got to go up and see her, and because they keep them sedated a lot of the time, I guess they just need to.
Yep. Keep them calm, let them heal.
Yep. And then the plan tends to be then to wean them off their medications and reduce the drugs that they're on, and then get to a point where they remove the ventilator and put them onto a different form of breathing support, but not a full-on ventilator.
And was there a time frame when they had told you, okay, this is when we know that she's past the 50%, this is when we know, you know, she's safer?
It was more, they kind of run with, you know, it could be one step forward, two steps back.
Right, okay. So not a clear picture.
There's never a clear picture because these babies do what they want to do. There's never a clear picture, and what someday works for some doesn't work the next day for the others. So there's never a clear picture. They're basically guided by the baby and how they're responding or not responding to things as to where they're at and what they do. They have, I guess, protocols to follow. You know, if they're responding this well to something for this long, well, then we'll reduce it and we'll start to turn this off and we'll start to turn this off. And we did get to that point.
So how did that process go for you?
I think it was over a couple of days. They started reducing her sedation. They were able to reduce some of her morphine, like pain relief. They were able to turn off her nitric for her pulmonary hypertension, and she was able to wake up. We had awake time with her. We still at this point weren't able to hold her, and holding a baby on a ventilator is a mammoth effort to even get them out of a bed into a parent's arms.
Yeah.
There's just lots of stuff.
So many cords, so much.
So many cords, yep. So she started to come off everything and was interacting with us, holding our fingers, looking at us, blowing bubbles around her tube in her mouth and that.
And you're experiencing this as reassurance?
Yes, yep. It was really good. I'd been expressing around the clock every 3 to 4 hours, and they started giving her my milk through the feeding tube. And I think there was a couple of instances where I was able to do that as well. So it was looking very good, very promising. And then suddenly it wasn't.
What day was that?
I can't remember exactly what day it was. I know she was born on a Monday. She had surgery on the Friday. I think over the weekend we started weaning off stuff and she seemed to be going okay. Mother's Day was approaching, and I actually came back to Toowoomba for a Mother's Day event at Lucas's daycare. So that's how comfortable I was to leave Toowoomba for a few hours. And Daniel had done the same at one point. And then she picked up an infection, I think, and she needed to go on antibiotics, so they just use a broad spectrum antibiotics to cover everything while they check for an infection. Sepsis seems to be a thing with these babies. I can't even remember what her infection was.
Sure.
And then she started to become quite sickly. They had pulmonary hypertension came back. They had to put her back on nitric. They had to start using sedation again. And then on Mother's Day, they gave her a blood transfusion.
Yep.
And she pinked up, as they called it, and she looked a lot better and healthier. And I don't really even remember between there and that she just seemed to up and down. She seemed to be going really well, and then she just wasn't. And like she backflipped. She just went from really good to everything looking promising to the doctors calling us in to have a conversation. And I'd watched them have a conversation earlier in the week with another family on the ward.
Really?
Yep. And saw them pull chairs over and tissues. And I was like, oh, I hope that's never us. And this day they asked us to come in and they pulled chairs over and they had tissues. And
you thought, did you already have a clue? You'd seen her backflip?
No. It floored us.
Really?
Yeah.
Really?
Yeah, because we couldn't see. I knew that she was going back on things and medications, but these babies are up and down. And I was talking to other families. So CDH Australia is a support organisation, so I was in touch with other families. And they say, yeah, this happened to our baby and this happened to our baby. And so you compare and you go, oh, well, this is okay and this might be okay.
And you'd already had battles and you probably thought, well, we're having another battle.
Yes, yep. So I wasn't prepared for a conversation that they basically said, look, we're pretty much at the end of the line. There's next to nothing left for us to do. And they said, we don't think she's going to survive. And, well, you need to make a decision whether we keep going as we're going or if you remove life support and make that decision to stop everything.
That must have been so counterintuitive, so shocking because you weren't experiencing that picture, you weren't seeing that picture.
No, we certainly weren't seeing that picture. If we look back now, yes, you can see that picture. You can see it in her pictures.
Really?
It's evident that she was getting sicker. They had, I think, the heart specialist come in and scan her heart because she kept having her heart rate just extremely high. And they just said, look, her heart's got some issues. It's, and I think the general consensus ended up being that she would pass away eventually. Her organs would shut down and she would not make it. So we kind of had to make a decision. I was angry. Daniel was angry. We weren't okay with what was going on. I questioned other treatment options and said, I know that there's ECMO where you can put them on like a heart-lung bypass to help their body heal, and they spoke to the Children's Hospital about that and they just went, no, she's not a candidate. She was never a candidate when she was born because she wasn't sick enough, but now she still wasn't a candidate because she was too sick. Was too far gone.
That's crazy.
And so I think I went back to the unit and I read about this ECMO and could see why they had said, like, it's not really an option. And I don't even know, Daniel and I, we talked, we went backwards and forwards. We started ringing family and just saying, look, this is the situation. I believe in God, so I prayed. And I didn't pray to have him or have Arabella saved. I just give me strength. I just needed to, whatever was coming our way, I just needed to survive. I needed to get through it. We spent a lot of time at the hospital with Arabella, and so did Lucas. And then I remember very vividly walking back to our hotel one day and our unit, and we got a phone call saying you need to come back here right now. and she was not in a good way. Her heart rate was through the roof, her blood pressure, she was just, and we didn't know if we were going to walk back in to her having CPR or anything. And that cemented it for us, that we said, Daniel and I sat down and talked, and I said, I'm not okay with our daughter dying hooked up to a machine in a bed in a NICU where we aren't, and getting a phone call saying you need to come here because this is it. So we made the decision to remove her life support.
And to be there.
And to be there on our terms, in our way. So we made preparations. We had family fly in to come and meet her. We had Heartfelt come and take photos for us. We had a lady come and do like fingerprint casting for us. And we tried to delay it by a few days because it was coinciding with my sister's birthday, and I did not want her to pass away on my sister's birthday. But we could see that it was to run the gauntlet if we tried to prolong things. So she ended up passing away on my sister's birthday. And yeah, so we had, it was weird. So the morning that we had made the decision, it was a Saturday morning, and I was strangely calm. My sister had done my hair for me, and we'd gone up to the hospital, and we'd had the Heartfelt photographer in and take photos, and everyone had photos with her and whatnot. And then she'd been awake this entire time, for hours she was awake, like she knew what was happening, or we knew. And then she started to get very tired, and we said, all right, let's hold her, because at this point in time we still had not held her. So she was 19 days old and we hadn't had a cuddle. So they pulled her out of her bed, cords, machines and everything, and Daniel had the first cuddles.
Really?
Yep. And then I did, and we kind of swapped backwards and forwards and held her. Nobody else did. We just went, no, this is for us. And we held her for hours and hours and hours, and then we could see she was pretty tired. And we'd made the decision to go off to a private room then at that point, so that it didn't happen in the NICU. And I think we said to the nurse, let's do this. So we carried her across, they unhooked her ventilator. They left the morphine on. They bagged her while we walked across to a little private room. And we sat on the couch with her, and they stopped bagging her, and 2-3 minutes and she was gone.
They stopped assisting her.
Yeah.
To breathe.
So yeah, they stopped the bagging, and they stopped assisting her to breathe. And sometimes the babies can continue to, I guess, breathe on their own, I hoped. And then sometimes they can live for a few more hours. But no, she was gone within minutes.
Really?
It was very fast. So that cemented that we'd made the right decision at that point. It wasn't long and drawn out. It was very fast, and she went very peacefully.
With cuddles?
With cuddles wrapped up in my arms.
So clearly the right choice to have her end on your terms.
Yes.
And you hadn't had control this whole time.
So it was a
and
control thing.
Finally you had control to ensure that she had a good end.
Yep. So it was all on our terms. And that's all we wanted, is that if we had to do it, and if this had to be the way it went, it was the way we wanted it to go.
So she was 19 days?
Yeah. 19 days old.
Yep. Yeah. Darling, I can't even imagine. Can't even imagine.
It's a lot. And it has been a lot.
So where did you go from there? How did the next year play out? Can you talk a little bit about that?
We had to...
I mean, you would have been utterly exhausted to begin Your head would have been spinning.
We had to plan a funeral. And that's extremely overwhelming and daunting, trying to just plan a funeral, relocate ourselves back from Brisbane to Toowoomba, try and get some sort of normality happening for Lucas.
Try to explain
to Lucas what was going on, and try and just navigate life and not having this baby that we were supposed to bring home.
A lot of people I talk to when they've had this sort of grief, I mean, you can't put words around it, that level of loss, and just trying to process this is real and this is a different future than I'd expected, getting your head around that. But a lot of them really talk to me about resenting the fact that everyone else's world goes on.
Yes.
Yeah.
It was huge for us, so it was isolating eventually. So once everyone's there at first, there's flowers, your house is filled with flowers.
Food.
And well wishes. We didn't get so much food.
Everyone,
just lots of flowers.
Please bring food. Food's the thing you need. Yeah.
No, they didn't get that memo. Just I had a house full of flowers,
right,
and sympathy cards and text messages. What can we do? So yeah, food's good. Food's and coffee,
good.
yes.
Food and coffee, yeah.
And then we had the funeral, and we had a big turnout for a funeral, and we had a massive party fit for a princess after the funeral. Nice. Wasn't to be sad. And then everyone's lives went on, and
exactly
ours did not. Our world had completely come to a standstill. And I remember actually putting a post up, my favourite thing to do, on Facebook, and basically saying to people, look, we know that your lives have gone on and your world has kept moving, ours has not. But we said, please, if you want to know something about what we went through, if you want to know anything, please ask us. Don't tiptoe around us. Don't.
Well, people do that, hey, because they're scared of your grief. They don't know what to say. They don't have words. They feel incredibly awkward.
Yeah.
And so they'll often withdraw.
Yes, and we found that a lot of people withdrew. We lost friends. We had family block us on Facebook and that eventually because they found my sharing too much to deal with.
That's harsh.
It made them uncomfortable, I guess. And so, it was incredibly isolating. People did start to reach out and ask questions, and I loved being able to share Arabella's story and talk about her.
Part of your healing.
Yes.
And reality.
Yeah, well, this was my life now, and I had to navigate my new normal and how that looked for us as a family going forward. And it was rough. I think I coped. You don't have a choice, I guess, is what we say. I had a little boy who needed a mum. I had a little boy that needed to go to daycare every day, and so he'd come in and be, Mum, I need breakfast. Mum, I need to go to school.
And that's such a protective factor, isn't it? Having someone that makes you get up, have food, wash the clothes, you get dressed. They make you function, and that's an incredibly protective factor for grief. Imagine if you didn't have a child. You could just curl up in a ball.
I curled up in a ball lots when he wasn't around, but I had to get up and get him to daycare, and I had to pick him up in the evenings. But, during the day in between, there was lots of curled up in ball, sleeping, and just trying to process.
When you went on to have your next number 3,
yes,
was that a scary process? Was it a healing process?
It was a horrible process, if I'm blatantly honest, because we struggled to fall pregnant. We battled with infertility. We suffered 2 miscarriages.
Boom.
But, just one after the other. It was an incredibly anxiety-driven pregnancy. And then we had a beautiful baby boy. We wanted a girl. So we battled with gender disappointment as well. And
You wanted a girl to help you heal with Arabella.
yeah, we desperately wanted a girl, and we didn't find out what we were having, which hindsight we probably should have been better prepared. But yeah, we had our rainbow baby after three and a bit years.
Rainbow baby means?
A baby born after loss is a rainbow. So basically, if there's always a rainbow after a storm.
Right.
So babies born after loss are referred to as a rainbow baby.
Okay.
I honed in on that. Everything for him was rainbow.
There you go. I hope he likes rainbows.
Yeah, he does. He loves rainbows.
Great. And then you went on and had another.
We
Number
then
4.
had another, so we knew we weren't done with Maverick. And so we decided once more we'd try again. And we were again met with infertility. We struggled to fall pregnant. We then fell pregnant. We then had another loss at 12 weeks,
Wow.
little girl.
Huge.
Yeah. And that was a partial molar pregnancy, so I then had to be monitored. We couldn't then try to conceive for a little while. And then we were finally given the all clear after a few months to try. And I was like, we're going to do this again for years. And we fell pregnant very quickly. And 11 months ago, I had a beautiful little girl.
So we have got an 11-month-old gorgeous girl.
Yes.
And she's gorgeous, isn't she?
She is amazing. She's everything we waited for and more. It's insane. Our life is crazy. I don't recommend having too many children. But I wouldn't swap her for the world. She has definitely brought a lot of healing. And I see I see a lot that I miss because I missed out on so much with Arabella, but I'm so incredibly thankful that I'm now getting to experience it all with Mika, and I think it makes it just that little bit more special. And she's been incredibly healing for Daniel, and also for Lucas. Lucas just adores her and thinks she's the best thing since sliced bread. He said the other day, I knew we'd have a cute baby, but I didn't think she'd be this cute.
That's gorgeous, eh? And in there in the mix, there's little Maverick with no clue what's going on.
No, Maverick's, it's
a ball of energy.
Yes, he's Maverick. That's the only way to sum him up.
Name.
Yes. But yeah, he's great as well. They all have been great.
Darling, can I ask you, we're going to wrap up if that's okay, with people, I'm astounded by how common this condition is for families to go through, and the fact that there's so little education is just horrendous, isn't it? Because, there's no preparation for it. You're going to have nowhere to put this information, and you're going to feel very isolated.
Yeah.
So, any words of wisdom for anyone who's stepping into this world? Listen to this podcast.
Yeah, listen to the podcast.
Yeah.
Don't be afraid. Just share your stories, share your babies, talk about them. For the people on the other side, don't be afraid to ask about them. The best thing you can ever do for a bereaved parent is to ask them about their babies and say their baby's name, because it is honestly the best is when someone asks about them.
Well, we'll have to change the title to Arabella, won't we?
And just, I guess, for a bereaved mum, no, you're not alone. There are many, many people that have gone out there. You just need to
reach out,
find those people. And I guess if you need things, if you need support, ask for it. Don't just, be specific, bring food. Bring me a coffee. Because people say, what can I do to help?
And they genuinely
don't know what to do. So I have learnt, be specific. I need you to do this for me. And you'll find people, they will reciprocate.
I just tell everyone, bring food.
Oh, look, bring food's the best.
Pretty good start. No, but you're right. Communicate.
Yep, just communicate.
Absolutely. Absolutely. And I really, when we're going through a grief about anything, it's always so important. A healthy grief is when you put on the table and you're open about that person, that event. And so it's so much more important, I think, when you've got a family member that's not here anymore and that beautiful person, child, is a family member. So let's not behave like they weren't. Let's talk about them. Let's embrace them.
Don't forget about them. Remember their birthdays and acknowledge it. Yeah, just acknowledge them. Acknowledge that they were here and they existed, because as a bereaved parent,
that's true respect
don't
to
forget. Them. Yes, 100%.
Darling, I cannot thank you enough. I think I love how open you are, and even though it might be your beautiful character, I still think it's very courageous to talk.
Thank you.
So thank you.
I just hope that other people can hear it and then feel comfortable to share their stories and not feel alone.
Talk, people.
Yes, talk. It's
talk. Good. It is. Well, thank you very much.
Thank you very much for having me.
Absolutely. So everyone, if you want to find me online, the website, KirstenHunterAuthor.com, lots and lots of free resources there, Facebook and Instagram, Kirsten Hunter Author, and I think that'll do. So thanks again, darling.
Thank you.
See ya.
Bye.